I do have one thing that is important. I have some pain, and I would love to talk to somebody who could help me release that pain
You,
without surgery or without medication, with just the magic of my mind. I wonder if you know of anybody that I might be able to talk with about that.
well, I've got somebody in mind because it is St. Patrick's Day. So Daniel Cleary here has agreed to join us this evening. And let me just tell you a little bit about Dan. Now, here's the official scoop. The official scoop says that Dan is an internationally recognized certified hypnosis instructor and pain relief educator, teaching hypnosis and hypnotic techniques throughout the United States and Europe to doctors, psychologists, therapists, and other hypnotists. And his specialties include pain relief and personal transformation. But I've got to add to that because Dan is somebody that I actually know. He's not just a bunch of words on a page. He's a lovely human being. He was a past president of the Hypnosis Education Association here in Florida that I also have been involved with through the years. I have known Dan for I think it's 20 years, Dan. It's very close to that if it isn't that already. So I'm really delighted to have this evening to talk with you. And in a moment, if I'm lucky here, I'm going to be able to turn on your microphone. There, I have just done that. So welcome, Dan. And welcome to the show.
So
Okay.
I don't want to just jump in here, Michael. If you've got an opening question you'd like to start with, by all means. If not, I've got, I think Dan and I have something in common.
Well, in fact, here's kind of where
We're on the call.
we're on the call. There's something I mentioned to Dan too that I'd like to start out with because Dan has had his own personal experience of living with severe chronic pain, and he became a member of the Chronic Club a whole bunch of years ago, and I thought it might be useful for us to just understand how it is that he through that came into this. So Dan, can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, a little over 40 years ago, which is just beyond my ability to conceive of at this point, I was in a motorcycle wreck, and I went over the handlebars. Apparently, I put my arm out to break my fall or something, and it did more than that. It broke my collarbone, ripped my arm around behind me or something. I got thrown 75 feet, and I woke up in the hospital. I had what is called a brachial plexus avulsion, which is the nerves from my arm were torn out of my spine. Burning, crushing pain, 24/7. First 5 years, I didn't sleep in the conventional sense. I would go 24, 36 or more hours, and then I'd collapse for 3 or 4 hours and wake up in tears. I took massive drugs. I had, this is the beginning of opioids and all that, so they were very free with them at the health maintenance organization I was a member of. And I grew up in the 60s. I had a lot of street access too. So I took a lot of drugs. But it didn't help. It just made me care less about the pain. I learned about, I had a hypnosis session at 5 years after my wreck. And honestly, I didn't think the hypnotist was any good, and I didn't think hypnosis worked. But it reminded me of my metaphysical studies back in the late 60s. And so I took what I got from that session, and within a week I was sleeping 6 to 8 hours a night most nights. Cut back on my drug use to fractions, and began developing it more and more for myself. And in the process, I noticed that, you know, in a way, like attracts like. I don't really like that phrase, But when you're in pain, other people that are in pain, you seem to meet them or seem to acknowledge them. And I found that just by talking to people, I could help them relieve their pain by simple stuff. My metaphysics is what I considered it. And I did that for probably another 10 years. And somebody at one point, I was in a boatyard. I had first thing that you do when you paralyze your right arm and have a lot of pain. I had been a carpenter, so that once I was vertical and able to walk and talk and things like that, I went out and bought a boat and that needed to be rebuilt so that I could learn to be left-handed. And I ended up in Florida, and I was having the boat hauled, and the guy who was running the travel lift, and those of you who don't know, a travel lift is this huge metal beams and all this, and they drive over the water and lift your boat out. I'm sitting, he told me that his back was bothering me, and this was the last boat of the day, and this was going to be a pain, and yada, yada, yada. And I said, not a problem. I jumped up on top of the engine of this thing, which is roaring, and talked him through his back while I was actually talking about my sailboat, about how he knew exactly how to lift it and how to make it so that everything stayed straight inside and that it balanced well in the thing. And as he put it down, he said, I feel a lot better. He says, that's hypnosis. I said, no, it's not. And he says, yeah, it is, and you should get paid for that. And I said, oh. Wait a minute, paid? And so within a couple of days, or actually certainly within a couple of weeks, somebody said there's a hypnosis course you should take. And that was where I became the official hypnotist. It was, and the funny thing is that when I got my training, I was unable to do what I had been doing naturally for several years because I was given these scripts and this is the way it's supposed to be, and very old school hypnosis style. And it took me about 6 months to get over my training.
You're quick.
Well, when I had my first hypnosis session with this psychiatrist back 5 years after my wreck, he did this walking down 20 steps into there's a big door in a cave, and you go through the cave, this one. And he's at, step 5, and I'm at the bottom going, come on, come on. And I thought, okay, hypnosis is walk down 20 steps and go into a cave. And I don't like caves, and I'm impatient, so I'm not waiting for 20 steps. When I took my certification class, the first script was walk down 20 steps and go into a cave. Anyway, that's how I got involved in this stuff. Thoughts, ideas.
So that, now I've got to know, did that in some way help your pain?
Oh, within days, I was able to release a good portion of it.
You were able to sleep, you said, even with the bad hypnotist, but I wondered if when you really understood how to put hypnosis to it, what that did for your pain.
Well, hypnosis doesn't exist, so within a week, learning that it was or comprehending or imagining even that it was just metaphysics is what did it for me in the beginning. Because I knew metaphysics, I knew how to go into trance, I knew how to go to I played with out-of-body experiences way back in the 60s and things, and so getting to a point where I could zone out was not a problem. Learning to do it so that I could do it quickly and while I was doing other things and stay functional, that's the icing.
terms, if you will, Dan, because I know sometimes we talk about chronic pain, and that sounds like what you've been talking about too. And gosh, having that pain for that many years, that's chronic. What is acute pain? And I don't think any pain is very cute, but what is the difference between chronic
Oh
and
no, it really is. The pain that has dimples, that's beautiful. But I don't see her anymore. Um, acute pain and chronic pain. Acute pain is responsive to and relative to a current injury, you know, and it probably lasts for hours or days, and you can understand it if even in the process of it. Oh, I've got a toothache. I broke my leg. You know, it's going to be a week before I can put any weight on it, and you've got a way to grapple or to understand it in your mind and accept even great discomfort for a short period because it's getting better.
Because you see that an end game ahead.
Yeah.
See the stop. Yeah.
Yeah, and chronic pain is it's from the word chronos. It just goes on. It's at time. Generally, I think 3 to 6 months after the onset, you can go, okay, this might be looking toward chronic.
And once it boils over to chronic, that's when doctors really start saying there's nothing they can do but opioids or surgery or something like that. Is that correct?
Well, no, I don't know. I'm not medical. I avoid that. Mostly, I think that a great portion of the doctors that I've seen over the years treat people like a mechanic. This is the signal, this is the painkiller, this is the drug to use for this or that or this or that. They don't have a lot of reliance. Many don't. Many are learning and coming into this now. Michael Elner and I, for 7 years, were teaching at a medical conference. And we met a lot of doctors who were really on board with our stuff and with the idea of mind-body connection, if not mind-body medicine.
So what is the access then to the mind and the relationship to the pain?
If you're not connected to your mind, you don't have any pain. I think that's called dead.
I was wondering if you have an access point, if that gives you an access point to the mind, if you can use that point.
Consciousness. If you're if you're awake, or if you're conscious, you're connected. Mm-hmm. I think one of the biggest difficulties that I see in the understanding of mind-body is the concept that, well, I have to learn how to do it. And the fact of the matter is that, if when it gets gray and rainy and funky out, you feel blue, then you're connected. If the environment changes the way you feel, you're connected. If somebody being rude to you upsets you for a few days or an hour or whatever it is, you're connected. We're connected all the time. What we have to learn is to eliminate the distractions that have made you forget that we are connected. I mean, with Jack Elias the other night, recognizing that we are already connected and that we already have an innate ability to change things is a whole lot different than having to learn how to connect you or get connected. We're there. We're already there. It's easy.
And now
Or it's simple. It's not easy.
how do we access the relief point then? We're connected, but now how do we access relief?
Lots of different ways, and that's the thing that I've learned. I've had a lot of training.
Yeah, if I can offer something here, and I think this is sort of the direction that Karen's going to, is that I know, first of all, between chronic and acute pain, there's something that's always been very fascinating to me, is that I sort of think what I can do with myself in terms of pain management. I've had the good fortune of not having to learn how to do while I was in excruciating pain. I could learn in classes things about managing my feelings, managing my state, doing things with hypnosis, and learn them and get them down as skills. So then when I needed them, they became available to me. On the other hand, when you're working with somebody who's in acute pain or who's in pain all of the time, it's rather a real challenge to be able to teach people how to open up their awareness or their connection, as you will, and experience something different, because it seems to demand attention. You have a different way of thinking about hypnosis and what hypnosis is. So
Yeah, well,
maybe we can move in that direction.
Well, here again, when you're living with a chronic condition or chronic pain or a chronic painful condition, I mean, think about it, that life is a sexually transmitted chronic disease that's always fatal. You know, but during that period between birth and the last goodbye, there will be times that you're laying in bed at night asleep and you wake up and have to go to the bathroom. And so you get up and you're tiptoeing into the bathroom and ow, stub your toe, the ottoman attacked. You're jumping up and down on one foot, trying to scream silently so you don't wake anybody in the house. And you can imagine that in your life right now. And what happens when you're doing that? Your toe has been attacked by the ottoman or the chair leg or whatever it is. Now, it's not likely that that's going to hit again, because chairs are pretty stable in where they stay. And yet your shoulders, your hands, most people make a fist. They go, and you get tense all over your body responding to this attack on your toe. Mm-hmm. If you imagine that this is a way or a similar situation to dealing with the chronic pain, when you forget that it's only the toe that hurts and you keep all the other muscles tight, they begin to develop their own pains and send their own signals. And it compounds and it compounds and it compounds. Now, if you recognize that the ottoman is probably not going to come after you again, and breathe through it and consciously let go of the rest of your tension, then it changes from the pain being universal throughout your body, from over tensing, to just this one signal. And you go, oh, I've done this before. It'll be half an hour, and I'll be fine. And then for a day or two, it'll be hard to put a shoe on. Other than that, it's not an issue. You know, I live in Florida. I wear sandals most of the time anyway. And
who needs feet? I'm just going to sit here.
Yeah. Hey, man. So when a client comes in, most of them don't recognize all the referred pains that they live with. Chronic pain can cause acute pain. Part of my situation is that my right arm is paralyzed. And so the muscles have atrophied and all that. There's no movement. Some of the people that have a similar condition keep their arm in a sling all the time and things like that. I don't have the time for accessories. So my arm hangs. And those of you who know me have seen me around, and a lot of times people don't notice until they try and shake hands with me or something like that. The weight of the arm is just like carrying 10 pounds in your hand all the time. It's not a problem, and then after an hour or 2 hours, it gets to be really heavy. It offsets my shoulder muscles and my back muscles. Other things that other nerve damage that I have that's secondary, if you will. I've got a lot of aches and pains that are related to compensating for this arm. As I mentioned, I rebuilt a sailboat and went offshore sailing and, solo Atlantic sailing up and down the coast and over to the Bahamas and things like this. There's a lot of things that you do in a day that overstrain your other muscles. So, compensate, so the chronic pain is the core that causes daily acute pains, and getting able to function in that way teaches you a lot of neat tricks. So did I completely confuse you on that?
No, not at all.
Michael,
I can see your lips moving, but I can't.
This is the ventriloquist act that we have going on here, Karen. So, so that would be a nice way to do it. I'm just sorry. I'm looking at the clock, and I just want to caution you that we have about 15 more minutes with Dan, and so just being aware ahead of time that we'll hopefully we can get a couple questions in there as well from folks that are listening. There's something that I think is really an issue here, but first of all, just to make sure we get this out on the table, your program, and I didn't announce it this way at the beginning, your program is called Targeting Pain. It's one day, it's a full day on Friday of the conference weekend. And what are you going to teach people to do in your class?
Change the world.
All right.
Cool. And then in the afternoon, we're going to get busy. There's a couple of things, and this has to do with signing up as soon as you can. You're going to get, let me get my book. You're going to get Targeting Pain, the book, and Michael's Head. I have homework for you before the class starts. So, you see, while you were digging around, we were watching the top of your head. I was holding this up here. There we go. I have homework that I would like people to do before we come into class. So when you sign up, shoot me an email, or I'll see if I can work it out with the office that they give me your contact information. And I'll see if I can get the book to you ahead of time and give you this homework assignment. At the very least, if I'll be there Thursday, anybody that's in the hotel Thursday night, we can get together and have an hour or so to talk about what I'd like you to do. I think that my experience with relief, and I use the term relief rather than management because management is more work. And when you're living with chronic conditions, there's enough you have to deal with that you don't want more work. That's just my take on it. It's not the techniques. It's not the depth of trance. We're working with people and helping them to discover ways to get relief while they're walking down the street, while they're driving their car, with their eyes open. And this is not something that, you know, I mean, it's great when you've got the time and you can sit home and close your eyes and Om Mani Padme, or do your self-hypnosis trance, whatever it may be, and do a formal session where you get, you know, longer lasting benefits. But when you're in the office and your back is bothering you and you've got to make a phone call, you've got to make the phone call. So, you know, there's 30 seconds. To me, when a client comes in, my goal of the first session is for them to get a level of relief that they can recognize and they can replicate in 3 minutes or less. So that's what you'll learn. Other than that, probably, you know, like I say, in the morning we'll be busy, in the afternoon we'll get to work.
Well, it's very familiar in that what I think I'm hearing you say, Dan, is much like what you're feeling can actually trigger an action or a relief rather than triggering that tension. I experienced that in Lamaze years ago, which was just hypnosis by another name. But in Lamaze, they told us that a contraction during childbirth was a signal to release and let go and relax and let the body take its course and breathe instead. It made childbirth very easy to see it in that context.
I've heard that childbirth is the only way that a woman can understand what it feels like when a man has a cold.
That was funny.
Yeah. The thing is that we, you know, when we talk about the difference between relief and management, when they come in, I mean, typically a client comes to see me, I'm the last resort. I'm way down the hall. Next, you know, I mean, beyond me, next door down is faith healing, and they've probably been there already anyway.
Do they have a resort for that?
They do. It's the last resort. When they come in, they know management. Management in their case is, I take these pills, I do this, I let somebody else drive, because if I take the pills and I have a drink and they know how pain management works. I'm not interested in teaching them to manage. I'm interested in helping them to find the resources to find relief. And this is, it's not technique. It's helping them to recognize skills that they have. A musician, for instance, might be able to tune out the pain. And he knows music. And you know, so I can go with that. I worked with an accountant, and formal trance was just out of the question with this guy. I mean, it's just nope. I said, you know, and I finally looked at him. I mean, all my clients have taught me most of what I know. Certainly, they've taught me anything that I know relative to getting somebody else to make changes. And I finally looked at him and I said, you know, does having this pain, does this interfere with your life? And he said, yes, of course, that's why I'm here. I said, yeah, okay, you know, calm down. And I said, well, you do this and this and this. And he said, yeah. And I said, it just doesn't add up, does it? Would it be acceptable to invest in yourself? And I came up with what I call the 4% solution, which is a predecessor of the 10% solution. Or it's completely different, but they both sound good. They both have solutions. And what is it? I can't remember the old AA thing that alcohol is a solvent, not a solution. Working with chronic, it takes over your life when you're living that. I don't know if anybody on the call experiences chronic issues, but even going back to the idea of that I did with the stubbing your toe, think about that and how all those responsive reactions that you have in your system interfere with the quality of life. So I may not be able to change the signal that is generated. That in my case, that I have broken nerves, and both sides of the break are fine. But my brain doesn't know that the break's there, so it says, "Hey, there's a problem here. There's a problem here. There's a problem here." You know, I can't change the signal, but I don't have to respond to it.
Nice.
You know, or I can change the way that I respond to it.
Dan, there's something that that has often touched me. I mean, I've heard you speak a number of times. I'm also just going to mention right now that, by the way, we've probably only got about 5 more minutes left, or 6, something like that. So if anybody has a quick question that they'd like to write in the chat box, go ahead and do that, and we'll see if we can get that in. But in the meantime, Dan, I've heard you talk about, and what you just said really was an illustration of that. The experiences that that people who are in chronic pain go through, and you know, and that they are, in fact, the way that I've heard you talk about it is that they are heroes. And I really think that's a beautiful thought and a beautiful way to talk about it. So can you just share a little bit about that?
Yeah, I consider my clients to be heroes, flat out heroes. And if you think of the hero, the icon, the archetype of hero, very often, you know, the knight in shining armor kind of thing comes to mind, and that's not that may be where the hero ends up. But the hero is an ordinary person in extraordinary circumstance who perseveres. The hero, when I'm assisting a hero to access skills and abilities they already possess, I'm not there to fix something that's broken. I'm there to assist them through a challenging time. And so it changes the whole dynamic. I mean, I'm not there to repair a broken anything. I'm there to help them find the skills and abilities that they possess and use them to help them through the challenge that they live with. It's amazing when you're working with people that it is an honor to assist.
Yeah.
You know, and it you know, again, it's not the technique. I mean, you know, oh, you know, your hand is cold and numb, and somebody said that to me, I slap them upside the head. Cold and numb are exactly what hurt the most. You know?
So you slap them up the side of the head with a cold, numb hand.
No, I do it with hot fury.
But you have some very colorful language, Dan. Hot fury and cold, and you know, these things are very descriptive. They're very descriptive. I heard you tip us off a little bit a moment ago to some of the languaging you use to really talk to a client, rather than managing, because that sounds like work, relief. Well, that gives me hope. That's exactly the kind of thing where you're gently teaching them how to change their mind, are you not?
Yeah, I suppose that's the ballpark, yeah.
And are there other specific languaging that you would use?
Here again, I am there to serve them. Their language will tell me where we're going. I have done for years. Michael knows this. For years, I've spoken about language. I won't say that I'm an NLP practitioner, though I've done some NLP training. I've trained with you, Michael. But language is a very important aspect, and I think that I have learned for years I've spoken about language and the difference between talking to you on this call or speaking with you.
Mm.
Huge difference.
Sure.
Hi, kid. Hi. And when I was, those of you who know me know that that my wife was German, and I went over to Germany. I was going to move there at one point, and German is really hard to learn for me. I pick up Spanish much more easily. And I began to recognize that all my language skills were, a lot of them go right past the client. They don't pick up on the difference between talking to and speaking with. And an example would be this guy, a client that I had seen months before. I was out in public someplace. I ran into him. He said, "You know that session we had?" I said, "Yeah." And I'm thinking back to the session and remember, okay, I know this guy. And remembering all the clever things that I said. And he said, "Well, you know, it changed my life." And I said, "Really? Was it such and such?" And he says, "No, I couldn't figure out what the hell that was all about. But on the way out, of the office, I asked you about a restaurant. You told me about this Italian place up the street. I went there, and I'm getting married to the waitress. You changed my life. Thank you." And it made me realize that our language skills are important, and we can use them with our clients in many different ways. But for me, what I've learned is that lately is that I think is the most important aspect of it is that if I use my language with the intent of changing them, I am doing the form of marketing NLP that I see so much from the manipulator end of the NLP community. And when I use the language, I change me. When I'm using my language and doing it to assist a client rather than to manipulate them into a new behavior, I change me, and that changes our relationship. Yeah. So while my language is still important, my intent of how to use the language has shifted. I am using it now to make sure that I stay in the presence or in the state of awareness where I can pick up on their language and help them on that level. Does that make it?
That makes perfect sense, Dan. And we're running to the end of our time here, Dan. So one of the things that has been asked in the chat room, and I was going to ask you anyway, how can people get in touch with you if they want to contact you separately from the conference?
Dan Cleary at Juno.com is my email.
Dan Cleary at Juno.
Or DanClearyHypnosis.com is my website.
Okay. That's also where they would notify you if they take the class so that they can get the materials, right?
Bingo. One in a row. Yep.
Okay. Dan Cleary at Juno.com. Dan Cleary, the author of Targeting Pain, A Practitioner's Guide to Relief, presenting a one-day program on Friday of the conference weekend on targeting pain. We're looking forward to seeing you, Dan. And we have a little, what do I want to say, a little ritual that we engage in here because we just love the fact when all hell breaks loose, and it's St. Patrick's Day besides, so even a better opportunity. So what we're going to do in a second here is we're going to open up everyone's microphones so they can all just tell you how much they appreciate you being with us tonight, and we certainly do appreciate you being with us tonight, and we'll look forward to seeing you in Daytona Beach, just around the corner.
2 months, be there.
So bring beers and say cheers.
Say thanks.
Green beer is not beer, okay?
On St. Patrick's Day, it has to be green.
So send greetings to Dan, everybody. Say hello, say goodbye, say thank you very much. We really do appreciate it, Dan.
Thank you, Dan. Look forward.
Happy trail.